Welcome to the panel portion of our discussion. Data management, synchronization has obviously been a challenge between manufacturers and distributors. It's kind of been a painful process that now has gone on for a decade or so. And there are a couple of things that are evident. It's ended up in a struggle, it's ended up in a prioritization, but there are great opportunities. And the panel that's been assembled here today are all experts in their fields. We have 2 manufacturers, we have a distributor, and we have 2 technical experts. The objective of today's session is to provide you with concrete information of how both manufacturers and distributors can make money out of data. Now, it isn't an easy process. It's a methodical process. And if the process isn't taken with the right steps in the right sequence, it will, and many of you in this room may have already experienced this, to be a painful and arduous process. Now, the last thing I am in this room is an expert on data management. So it's my honor to introduce the panel members to you, and each of them will have 5 to 7 minutes, which they'll give an opening presentation. And after each panelist gives their presentation, then we will open up for about 35 or 40 minutes of questions and answers. Our panelists are Steve Bazat, who's Senior Vice President of Epicor, Denise Keating, who's President of Data Agility, Rick Peters, who's Program Manager, Marketing Communications of Eaton Corporation, Mark Richards, who's Director of E-Commerce at Leviton, and Wes Smith, that's President of Mayer Electric. And we've decided to go in alphabetical order. So if my alphabet is current, my memory serves me right, we'll turn it over to Steve, and he'll have approximately 5 to 7 minutes to open his opening remarks.
All right, let's check this mic out. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right, cool. And just to start off, who's a manufacturer? Could you raise your hand? Good. And then distributors, that would be the people who didn't raise their hand. Well, so there's really more manufacturers than there are distributors in the room. So kind of keep that in mind. I was born Bazat, right? So I learned data from a very young age because there's nothing phonetic about that name. So I just had to memorize how to say it and how to spell it. So I sort of cast a die because I've spent basically a lifetime building information systems, ERP systems, point of sale systems, and later on the IDW and the IDX. And it wasn't a plan, but that's kind of the way things turned out. And so having done that just basically forever, it's hard to sit here and think about why I should have to convince people that you could make money with data, because my whole career has been building systems that either consume or produce data, right? And to me, it's like, it's just obvious what you can do with this stuff. If you've ever, like in the early days, we would watch POs flow out of a distributor into a manufacturer's operation, and they would hit the other system, and they would bounce off on the floor, and people would pick them up and put them back together and figure out a way to get a pick ticket put together and get the stuff picked and shipped, right? And then as time went on and I saw people starting to synchronize data, we'd watch these beautiful things where the distributor's ERP system would produce a PO, it would flow through EDI, it would hit the ERP system at the DC would cause a handheld scanner gun to go out and pick that stuff. It would relieve the inventory, put it on the truck, and it'd be delivered. And the only person that ever touched it was a picker and a truck driver. And so how much money was saved in those 2 different transactions? It's hard to put a number on, but it's hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And if you multiply it times the number of times a day that very basic transaction goes on, it's a life-changing kind of thing. It's the kind of efficiencies that big consolidated industries build into their systems, like Walmart or Home Depot or Lowe's, where they can really pull it all together and force the data to match and force their systems to run basically lights out and untouched. It's the way that industries move from what you might call mom and pop businesses into organized, structured supply chains. I've watched price changes. It used to be, it would be a nightmare to get the prices out to the distribution community. The manufacturers have very complex algorithms. They take the algorithms, they produce a price change report, they would flow it out to the industry. It wouldn't make it onto all the ERP systems. The orders would come in anyway, and they would spend hours and hours and hours kind of unraveling invoices that were incorrect and where there was disagreement, right? So one of the key ways that you make money using data today and synchronizing data today is all these very powerful ERP systems, both in the distribution communities and the manufacturing communities. You get them hooked up, working together, you get the data synchronized on them, and you can take man hour after man hour after man hour out of the process of just going about the daily purchasing and delivery processes. Okay? And when we started doing this in '98, it was all about transactional data, about synchronizing the stuff on the ERP system so they could run lights out and untouched. And that got done pretty well, although I'm going to say more about that. But it morphed like 5 years ago into the number one need of the distribution community is to have data and information that they can populate their websites with. It's not so much that they all want to become e-retailers or e-distributors. It's just that a good, tight website is part and parcel of customer service today. Everybody expects to be able to go to their supplier's website, look some stuff up, check price and availability, do the basic search stuff, find it, read a long description. Whether they order it then or not is a whole other thing, because it's really about the convenience of sort of 24-hour access to that data. So I've seen the demand for data more from transactional stuff. And when I say transactional stuff, I mean the machine doesn't really care, the ERP machine. It cares about the part number, it cares about the pack, and it cares about the price. It doesn't care about the description or the attributes or anything, because it's just matching numbers up, right? But when you go to websites, you're switching your consumer from two computers synchronizing with each other to one side being a computer serving and the other side being a human being looking for human readable data. And so the demands on the data producers in the industry have basically gotten, I'll call it twice as hard as they were, because you got to go beyond the numerical data into the human consumable form of the data. So, and one last point on that is that in many industries, like I'm familiar with home centers because I've worked in that industry a long time, there's these 800-pound gorillas. We'll just call it Home Depot for lack of a better term. And they can force together their own catalogs because they're taking $200 billion business, and they're consuming one catalog with it. So the leverage is there, right? They can force the manufacturers to do what they need them to do. They can put the manpower on it themselves to pull it together, but they can put together their own darn catalog, right? Well, electrical is still blessed with what I call a fragmented industry. There's still 250 and another couple thousand viable distributors out there, but only a few of them are big enough to put together a catalog themselves and have it be cost efficient. They really, really, really need the manufacturers to supply a base data set that's clean. And in other industries, it's not so incumbent upon the manufacturers to have a clean base data set. But in this industry, being still fragmented, which I think is a good thing, it's really incumbent upon the manufacturers to put together the data sets that are clean so that the distributors and manufacturers can run the supply chains in a cost-effective fashion, and that the distributors can put together catalogs for their customer-facing websites. So that's my, I think, 5 minutes.
You hit it right on the mark.
All right.
Great.
Thanks for my opening remarks.
Denise Keating now of Data Agility.
Yep. We just had our panel session just prior to the manufacturing panel here. And our topic was really about technology and the leveraging of technology. And one of the things that we couldn't quite seem to stay off was the discussion on high product content. Every technology, doesn't matter if you're talking an ERP system, a PIM, EDI, VMI, XML, any of that, right? Just pick an acronym. Anytime you go to implement and leverage technology, the fuel for that technology is the data. And at Data Agility, we're really very, very passionate about the data, not because we're geeks, but because we have seen what data can do for an organization. So not only is it about making money in terms of optimizing your sales, it's also about revenue acceleration. It's also about, we could have called this session too, how to save money with product data as well. There are a lot of efficiencies that you can gain from high quality data. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the quality of the data from the standpoint that as we were having our discussions earlier, and the fuel that's needed for these technology, it's not just data in any condition that will make all of those systems work. You have to have high quality data. And I think part of the challenges that this industry faces is really defining and measuring what high quality data is. So we talk about it, and we talk about it, and we talk about it, but we've never really put anything in place that allows us to measure the quality of the data. So I think as a first step in the industry, we have to say first what we mean by that. And at Data Agility, we ascribe 7 characteristics to quality data. And you have to put each of those characteristics in their proper context. And I'm going to run through them. We have that your data needs to be complete. And the completeness of the data isn't necessarily about whether you've provided the required fields to the IDW. It's about whether or not you have provided all the data that your distributors and your partners in the marketplace need in order to be successful. We need to have consistent data. We often find that when distributors are taking in manufacturing data, not only is the data inconsistent within a single data set from a manufacturer, they'll have multiple product managers working on their product categories, but every time that data comes in unnormalized, if you will, it causes a huge administration process for the distributors. And really what they want to be able to do is get data from the manufacturers that they can easily consume so we can start selling parts out in the marketplace. We also need data to be timely. So timeliness of the data isn't just about publishing a price sheet once a year when your prices change. It's not about just launching new products. It's also about the maintenance of the products that you currently have out in the marketplace. When you start to think about the data, it's absolutely critical, of course, when you launch a new product, to get the data out to your distributors to put into their systems so that they can actually place an order for that and get that product on the way to the warehouse. I know that if you talk with manufacturers, so many of them are focused on the cut sheets and the other, sexy marketing material, but it's really the data that enables the buying process and the movement of that product data to take place in the market space. It's also about making sure that the data is accurate. Not only is it important from the standpoint when you're putting products on a truck for transportation, you've got UPS and FedEx and all of the trucking companies using the weight information and the dimensions on those packaging to calculate what your costs are. We did some work with a retailer. They had one mistake that cost them $1 million. And it had been going on for some time. So when we did an evaluation of their data, so there's a success story, if you will, on how data was able to save this particular company some money. It's also about standardized data. We need to have data that flows from the manufacturer directly into the distributor systems. And to make that happen, we need to have everybody really embracing the standards for the industry. If we can build to one format and we can take in one format, then we've become much more efficient as a channel. And we also need to make sure that the data is synchronized, because I think oftentimes in the industry that there's a myth that if we deliver data to the marketplace, that we're automatically in sync with our trading partners. And we all know that the reality is that that's not true, because we see orders coming into customer service, they get stopped, there's pricing discrepancies, we have credit memos, we have debit memos, we've got products coming back to the manufacturer because the wrong product has been ordered. So syndication really is about the delivery of the data, but synchronization is really a process, and it requires an analysis to ensure that the data the manufacturer has in their system is an exact replicate of the data that's in the distributor system. I refer to that as a state of grace, and when that state of grace happens, that's when you get that perfect order flow through. I think part of our challenge for the industry on top of defining what that quality data is also the visibility of what the data issues are causing within an organization. I think the leaders within the company don't always see the number of orders that are getting stopped in customer service and the number of times the CSR has to pick up the phone and say, you know what, Mr. Distributor, you've ordered 12 and our standard package is 10. Would you like 10 or would you like 20? Some manufacturers don't make the call. They increase the quantity or they decrease it and they let the order flow. But then we had distributors who had implemented EDI processes, and when those invoices didn't reconcile on the quantities, it delayed payment. So this data doesn't necessarily get recognized because we're fixing it at the point in which it occurs. I think our industry, if we would look at our data and take a proactive response, we could save a ton of money in the channel as well. In discussions about high quality data, one, it doesn't happen by accident, and it is a shared responsibility. I think in the industry we have these discussions all the time, distributors talking about their need for data, manufacturers saying, I give you my data, and distributors are saying, you've got to give me quality data, it's your responsibility. It's both, I'm telling you, it's a collaborative process. Not only does the creation of the data start with the manufacturer, as a distributor, you also want to pull that information in a timely way. So as the manufacturers are making the investment in the data, you're also leveraging that data in a timely fashion. But I think the real definition for high quality data is really about the usability of the data. So data data in motion is what brings value to the data. Shared responsibility. We have to have that in the industry to make it all work. And without it, I think we're going to be here another decade still talking about our need for high quality data. So we need to define it. We need to measure it so that we can have a roadmap with our partners about fulfilling specifically what those data needs are. I think until we do that, we're going to continue to have this dialogue on data.